Not only had the years dried up her skin, but every day she was carrying the weight of sadness and hoping for some sort of miracle. She had been the source of this optimism for 30 years, ever since she watched her son go and never heard from him again. Because he had gone to a region where there was an outbreak and everyone swore he had perished from it, the entire community believed he had gone insane. Nevertheless, the modest Edelmira would constantly hold the picture of her son in her hands, raise her eyes to the heavens, and declare, "The Lord will give him back to me." Welcome to USA Stories channel. Do not forget to subscribe and activate the bell button to receive all new updates. Now let's go to the story. Edelmira was a modest lady. She was tricked into falling in love with a wicked man, but after learning she was expecting a child, she vanished from sight. After losing her parents and 2 brothers in a fire, the impoverished woman wept throughout her early days because she felt alone in the world. It was only via sheer miracle that she had escaped that catastrophe, and ever since, she had never ceased to believe that religion could always provide us the grace we needed, no matter how hard life became. She used to say, "I believe in miracles." She was unsure of how she managed to live that day in the middle of the fire. There was nowhere to run to. "I have no idea how I have survived. All I can recall is collapsing, and when I woke up I had no idea how I got to the courtyard. Though I was unable to support my family, I yearned to return. I became aware that I was the only person on the planet when the firemen showed up." The unfortunate woman described her sorrow in this way. Living with a neighbor, she was an orphan. Following her illness, the neighbor got her enrolled to a young girls' boarding school where she pursued her teaching studies. After graduation, her guardian passed away and Edelmira inherited the woman's modest home. She quickly obtained employment at a nearby nunnery, starting her career as an instructor at a very young age. Although the pay was not large, it gave her a steady source of money to cover her needs. She fell in love with a man who was a Ministry of Education supervisor at that school and had come to assess the personnel. Love was felt right away. The girl was astonished by the man's attentiveness and gentlemanly demeanor. She submitted herself entirely to him as a result of his frequent visits to her house and seduction. She didn't feel worried when the boyfriend left her since she was employed. Nevertheless, the nuns dismissed her after learning of her pregnancy because they believed she was a bad role model for the girls. However, they had to reinstate her since it was unlawful to fire her because of her pregnancy. While she was alone in the hospital welcoming her kid, she was able to purchase everything she needed thanks to her employment, even if things were not easy. This is how she met her son Leopoldo, the source of her constant motivation and the greatest joy of her life. The nuns merely waited to terminate her after her statutory maternity leave expired. She just had her kid as a family, so when she begged them for forgiveness, they chose to give her another opportunity and counseled her to be less naive when it came to issues of love. Edelmira had taken the term love, as in affection for a guy, out of her lexicon. She had promised her son that she would commit herself to him in body and soul, and that she would not let anybody stand in their way. She began taking up afternoon tutoring students as a way to augment her income. She thought that Leopoldo's education was the only way to end the poverty they had experienced, so she paid for his private school education, where he flourished as a child. Leopoldo, in contrast to the majority of the other kids there, was usually tidy, clean, and well-groomed. His mother saved all she could to fulfill her son's aim of becoming a doctor, since he was so driven to pursue that goal. With her help, she knew he could succeed. Leopoldo developed into a highly educated and cultured adult as he matured. In addition, he performed errands for his neighbors, earning money that he used to purchase items his mother was unable to afford. To spend quality time with her, he occasionally even brought her out to dinner. Leopoldo and Edelmira had a happy life. They were a team despite their lack of luxury, and there was no denying the mother and son's affection for one another. Their house was a happy place. Leopoldo had a gift for poetry writing. He had written numerous poems when he was younger, and someone pushed him to join a contest, which he won. He used the reward to renovate the little home his mother had received from the woman who had raised her when she was abandoned. Once the upgrades were completed, the woman who had reared Edelmira's mother's distant cousin showed up. She and her similarly affluent husband arrived in their own automobile, both of them looking opulent in their expensive clothing, shoes, and jewelry. With a cordial greeting, Edelmira told them about her son's interest in studying medicine. The pair assured her that they would be there for her. They recommended bringing him to the city so he might live a better life there. It seemed like a smart plan, even if Edelmira's heart was shattering. They persuaded Leopoldo to pursue his aspirations, even though he did not want to leave his mother. Mother and son exchanged their goodbyes with tears in their eyes, not thinking that they were about to embark on the worst disaster of their lives. Having never left home before, the boy delighted at the passing beauty as they went. But his dreams were dashed the moment he arrived at the couple's home. 6 more children were there, essentially in prison after being misled and kept only to be sold to childless families. Leopoldo was aware that he was helpless. The other kids, who had accepted their fate, were terrified. However, Leopoldo would not accept that destiny, and he made up an act of obedience while surreptitiously organizing his escape. Sadly, an outbreak ravaged the city during those days, resulting in the deaths of 2 of the youngsters. Leopoldo was afraid he might get sick out there. After the pandemic had stopped for 3 months, a foreign couple came and purchased Leopoldo. The couple, unable to comprehend his cries that he wasn't an orphan, used fictitious paperwork to remove him from the nation. Meanwhile, Edelmira was hopeless at home. Her calls to the persons who abducted her kid were not returned, and she had not heard anything about him in several months. She grabbed the sole picture she had of her kid and headed to the address the couple had given her, overcome with despair. A tall, blonde woman welcomed her and informed her that the couple had gone 2 weeks prior. Edelmira rushed to the police, distraught. Rather than offering assistance, they chastised her for entrusting her son to unknown individuals. The modest village teacher kept up her job throughout the years. She would go to the park every day in the hopes that someone would tell her about Leopoldo. She prayed, "In the name of God, someone give me a sign to find my son," as she held onto the tattered photo. She would travel to nearby places and follow suit. Many were staring at her with disdain. Some said she was insane since the antique picture appeared to have been grabbed from a forgotten corner. After retiring, the instructor would walk long distances to find out what was going on with her kid. As they watched her, her neighbors warned her not to waste any more of her energy because he had undoubtedly perished in the pandemic. "I have faith that my son will one day come through the door and give me a bear embrace." Edelmira replied, "I know that miracle will happen one day," her eyes welling with tears. The neighbors pitied her, knowing full well that her son would have been looking for her by now if he had survived. Edelmira grew elderly in anticipation of her lone son's return. She bought clothing every year, claiming to be waiting for his return. The hope flame flickered dimly at times and brightly at others, just like it had at first. The mom abruptly stopped eating, refused to take a shower, and declared that life had no meaning without her son one day. Her door did not open one morning. When her neighbors searched for her, she had given up on leaving her room. To everyone's amazement, 3 days later, she smiled and walked outside to get milk and new bread. She dreamed that a lady had told her that her son would come back, so her house and table were set for 2. The table was empty when the light went out. The woman, drenched in tears, started gathering the dishes and cutlery when she suddenly started crying. Standing in the room was an unidentified man. "Mom, may I give you a hug?" inquired the stranger. Dropping the dishes, Edelmira hurried towards him. In order to get him out of the nation, his adoptive parents had altered his identity and name. Though they had denied him access to contact, they had prepared him to become the doctor he had always desired. After completing his surgical specialization, he filed a lawsuit against them for effectively holding him captive. After Leopoldo prevailed in the court, his nation's embassy organized the search for his mother to bring them back together. He thanked his adoptive parents during a medical hour and prevented them from being taken to jail. Instead, he begged them to go see his mother with him. The pair expressed regret and begged for her unconditional forgiveness. For the reunion, the 3 of them traveled together. After 30 long years, Edelmira bowed down and praised God that her miracle had finally come true. The neighbors inquired how this was possible since they could not believe what they were seeing. "With faith, everything is achieved," Edelmira retorted. Her son brought her to reside in a cozy home. He married the neighbor's daughter after falling in love with her. Finally, Edelmira's heart was at ease, and she was pleased with her son for becoming a brilliant doctor. Now, friends, share your thoughts on this tale with us so that we can all read it. Please remember to subscribe to our channel, give us a thumbs up, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our videos. If you enjoyed the tale, the next video that plays on your screen will probably move you too.